April 1945. Berlin is burning. The Third Reich is collapsing in on itself. The streets are choked with rubble, smoke, and the sound of endless gunfire. Soviet artillery hammers the city day and night. In the heart of Berlin stands one building, a symbol of power, of empire, of Hitler's Reich, the Reichstag. For Adolf Hitler, who now hides deep in his underground bunker, it had long stood as a monument to German strength. For Joseph Stalin, it had become something else entirely, the ultimate prize. The Red Army would not rest until the hammer and sickle flew above its roof. This is the story of the final battle for the Reichstag, the last brutal chapter of a war that consumed the world. By the spring of 1945, Nazi Germany was finished. For the East, the Red Army had smashed its way across Poland, East Prussia, and into the heart of the Reich. From the West, the Americans, British, and French had crossed the Rhine and were driving through Germany's industrial core. But Stalin wanted one thing above all else: Berlin. He wanted Soviet troops to take the Nazi capital, and he wanted the red flag to be planted on the Reichstag. Not tomorrow, not in a week, but now. He knew Berlin's fall would not only mark the end of Hitler, but also secure Soviet influence over Central Europe in the years to come. Stalin was willing to throw thousands of lives away to ensure that the Soviets, not the Allies, would claim the glory. On April 16, 1945, the Red Army launched its final great offensive. Along the Oder River, thousands of artillery pieces unleashed a bombardment so thunderous, men said the earth itself seemed to split apart. Marshal Zhukov, 1st Belarusian Front, hurled itself toward Berlin from the northeast. To the south, Marshal Konev's 1st Ukrainian Front raced forward, determined to outflank Zhukov and steal the honor of storming the city. The race was on, a race of armies, but also a race of egos. Within days, Soviet spearheads smashed through the German defenses. Towns and villages fell in flames. Survivors fled west, desperate to surrender to the Americans instead of facing Soviet revenge. By April 21st, as the Red Army had reached the outskirts of Berlin, the city of Hitler was now surrounded. Berlin was already a wasteland. Months of Allied bombing had reduced whole districts to rubble. Thousands of civilians sheltered in basements, hungry, terrified, listening as artillery shells fell closer each day. But the Nazi regime demanded that the city fight. Joseph Goebbels, Hitler's propaganda minister, declared that every man, woman, and child must resist. Boys as young as 12 were handed rifles. Old men were sent to man barricades. The Volkssturm militia, barely trained, were thrown into the inferno. Despite the hopelessness of their cause, the Germans fought with desperation. They defended every street corner, every ruined house. The Soviets responded with overwhelming firepower. Artillery leveled entire blocks before the infantry advanced. Tanks rolled down avenues, blasting bunkers apart at point-blank range. The cost was staggering. Civilians were slaughtered alongside soldiers. The smell of death hung in the air. Fires raged unchecked, turning the night sky red. On April 25th, Berlin was completely encircled. The Germans trapped inside were cut off from the outside world. Food was gone, ammunition was running out, and yet the battle only grew fiercer. Hitler raged in his bunker beneath the Reich Chancellery, issuing orders to divisions that no longer existed. His generals knew it was over, but his orders were absolute. Berlin must be defended to the last man. For the Soviets, the Reichstag now loomed ahead. Stalin demanded that it be taken. It didn't matter that the true seat of Nazi power lay elsewhere, in Hitler's bunker. The Reichstag was a symbol, and symbols mattered. On April 29th, Soviet troops reached the Königsplatz, the square before the Reichstag. The final showdown was about to begin. April 30th, 1945, the day Hitler would take his own life in the Führer bunker. For the Soviet troops massing outside the Reichstag, the order had come down: storm the building. The Reichstag loomed like a blackened giant. Its once grand dome sagged in ruins. shattered by years of war. Its walls were scarred and pitted from artillery fire, yet it still stood, and inside nearly 2,000 German defenders prepared to sell their lives dearly. They were SS men, Volkssturm, police officers, and stragglers from shattered divisions. They had machine guns, rifles, mortars, and even anti-aircraft guns dragged into the building and aimed down at the square. The Soviets gathered their strength. The 150th Rifle Division and the 171st Rifle Division had been given the honor and the burden of taking the Reichstag. Political commissars walked among the men, handing out red banners already stitched and ready to be raised. The order was clear. One of these flags must be planted on the roof. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the bombardment began. Hundreds of Soviet guns opened fire, blasting the Reichstag with high explosives. The thunder rolled across Berlin. Stones shattered, fires erupted. For half an hour, the Reichstag was consumed in smoke and dust. Then at 3 o'clock, the whistles blew. The infantry surged forward. The square was a killing ground. German machine guns swept the open ground, cutting down men in swaths. Mortar shells burst among the charging troops. From the Reichstag's shattered windows, gunners poured fire into the waves of attackers. The Soviets dove into shell craters, crawling forward inch by inch. Progress was agonizingly slow. The worst obstacle of all was the anti-tank ditch before the building. Filled with water, it stopped the assault cold. Engineer battalions rushed forward under fire, carrying planks, doors, anything they could use to bridge the ditch. Men fell by the dozen, riddled with bullets, but others took their place. Slowly, bridges were laid. By late afternoon, assault groups reached the Reichstag's walls. Explosives blew open doors and windows. Smoke and fire poured from the breaches. The Soviet infantry stormed inside. Inside the Reichstag, chaos reigned. The ground floor was a fortress. Sandbags blocked the corridors. Barbed wire stretched across the staircases. Machine guns covered every approach. The Soviets advanced in small assault teams, grenadiers, rifles, sometimes flamethrower operators. They threw grenades into rooms, stormed in after the blasts, and killed anyone still standing. The Germans countered with stick grenades of their own. Explosions echoed through the hallways, deafening and disorienting. Smoke thickened the air. Visibility was measured in meters. The staircases became a killing zone. Germans fired down from above, mowing down men as they climbed. Mines exploded without warning. The Soviets answered with flamethrowers, jets of fire sweeping the steps. The walls blackened, the screams echoed, but still the defenders fought. In the assembly hall, the fighting turned hand to hand. Bayonets clashed, rifle butts cracked skulls. Men fought with knives, helmets, even bare fists. One Soviet recalled, "You could not see the enemy until he was on top of you. You smelled him, you heard him, and then you struck." Amid the slaughter, the race for the banner drove the Soviets forward. Political officers shouted, "The red flag must fly tonight!" Soldiers carried flags folded under their tunics. Some were cut down before they could raise them. Others planted them briefly, only for Germans to tear them down. In the great assembly chamber beneath the dome, the battle raged furiously. Fires burned in the corners. The ceiling above was torn open, smoke rising into the night sky. Germans fired from balconies, forcing the Soviets to crawl from cover to cover. Grenades rained down, exploding among the marble seats. Step by step, floor by floor, the Soviets pushed upward. Exhausted, wounded, covered in dust and blood, they climbed toward the roof. By midnight, the Reichstag was still not fully secured. German holdouts launched desperate counterattacks from hidden rooms, from stairwells, from beneath piles of rubble. But somewhere in the early hours of May 1st, a Soviet flag reached the roof. It was not the first banner raised that night, and it would not be the last. One flag carried by Sergeant Mikhail Yegorov and Junior Sergeant Meliton Kantaria reached the dome under the command of Lieutenant Alexei Berest. They hauled themselves through the smoke and debris, crawled onto the shattered roof, and raised the red cloth high above the ruins. Below, the battle still raged. Inside, men still killed and died, but on the roof, the Soviet flag flew. Stalin would later seize upon this moment. The flag was declared the official victory banner of the Soviet Union. Photographers staged iconic images in the days that followed, including Evgeny Kolday's famous shot of a soldier raising the banner, an image carefully retouched and distributed around the world as proof of Soviet triumph. For the men who fought there, however, there was no triumph, only exhaustion, grief, and silence. By May 2nd, the remaining defenders of Berlin surrendered. The city lay in ruins. Hundreds of thousands were dead. Millions more were homeless. The Reichstag itself was a husk. Its walls were pitted with shell holes. Its roof collapsed. Its halls filled with corpses and ash, but the symbol had served its purpose. For the Soviet Union, the fall of the Reichstag was the ultimate victory. For the Germans, it was the final humiliation. In the years that followed, the image of the red banner over the Reichstag would become one of the most enduring symbols of the Second World War. The battle for the Reichstag was more than just the capture of a building. It was the climax of 4 years of unimaginable suffering, destruction, and loss. For the Soviets, it was glory. For the Germans, it was ruin. For the world, it was the end of one of history's darkest chapters. On that shattered roof, amid smoke and fire, the red flag rose above the heart of Hitler's empire. And with it, the Second World War in Europe was drawing to its bloody close.
Thanks for watching. If you want more forgotten stories from World War II, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. There's more history to uncover. See you next time.